Whoa, okay, so Intel's 10th gen desktop processors are finally here. And in this video, we're gonna find out just how much of an upgrade this next gen really is over previous gen, and whether Intel can finally bring the fight back to AMD's Ryzen. Wait, what's that? I can't show the performance of the new chips yet? What? Why? Oh, because Intel said so? And also because I don't even have a chip to test yet? Yep, I guess that does kind of make sense. Well, what about this new Z490 motherboard ASUS just sent over? Oh, I can talk about that? Awesome. Okay, so even though I can't really show you guys what Intel's new 10th gen chips are actually made of, at least not yet, what we can do is get a feel for the Z490 platform that the chips will be plugging into. And the specific board we'll be taking a look at in this video is ASUS's TUF Gaming Z490-Plus Wi-Fi. But before that, go ahead and make sure you're subscribed, because I do plan on having a review of one of Intel's new chips on the channel as soon as Intel removes the tape from my mouth. Now, before we get to the board itself, for those of you who don't know what Intel's 10th gen is all about, we should probably just take a quick look at that. Oh, and for those of you who are in South Africa, ASUS ROG is currently running a competition where you can win a Z490 board, so check the details for that in the description down below. Now, the new 10th gen Comet Lake chips seem like a little more of a refresh rather than a full-on next-gen lineup, once again being built on the 14nm process, but even though these chips don't really feel all that new, they do come with some key upgrades over the generation they're replacing. I won't be digging too deep into all of those, but it essentially breaks down a little something like this. Intel has finally seen the light and enabled hyper-threading on all core chips in the lineup. That means the Core i9s get 10 cores and 20 threads, the i7s get 8 cores and 16 threads, the i5s get 6 cores and 12 threads, and the i3s are all 4-core, 8-thread parts. Heck, even the Pentium Gold lineup has hyper-threading, with each sporting 2 cores and 4 threads, with only the 3 Celeron chips being stuck with their 2 cores with no hyper-threading. Along with all of that, we're also seeing decent core clock increases across the board, with the top 2 Core i7s maxing out at 5.1 GHz thanks to Turbo Boost Max 3.0 on single core, and then maxing out at 4.7 GHz on all core. More impressive than that, the 2 top-tier Core i9s are expected to hit a max of 5.3 GHz single core and 4.9 GHz all core thanks to Intel's new thermal velocity boost, which basically boosts clocks as high as they can go as long as certain conditions like a specified temperature are met. The new Core i7 and Core i9 chips now officially support DDR4 2933 MHz, while the rest of the lineup gets snubbed and sticks to 2666 MHz. The last feature I personally think is really interesting is that Intel has decided to shave the thickness of the CPU dies down, only to add it back with a thicker IHS, which should help keep temps a little more manageable, though I doubt it's going to be by all that much. But like I said, we'll focus more on the chips themselves once I do actually have one and can run it through my gauntlet. So in the meantime, let's see what ASUS's TUF Gaming Z490-Plus Wi-Fi brings to the table. And first up, let's see what we've got in the box.
What's in the box?
The box itself is pretty stylish and gives us a preview of the almost trademarked yellow, gray, and black aesthetic of ASUS's TUF lineup. Compared to the exterior, the inside of the box is decidedly more minimalistic. And this flap on the side here is where we find one of the board's main selling points, the ASUS Wi-Fi antenna. Next we have the board itself, but we'll put that aside for just a second. Under the next layer of cardboard, we have the rest of the goodies. First off, the manual that we'll only ever use to make sure we're plugging our front panel connectors into the right holes. A few pages into the manual, we find something way more interesting. A bunch of TUF Gaming stickers, and surprisingly, they actually don't look half bad. Up next is a nice little certificate of reliability, which lists a bunch of tests that the board's different components managed to pass. Pretty cool. Then we've got 2 SATA connectors, can never have too many of those. This subtle but stylish I/O shield, which I'll almost definitely forget to install until after I've already installed the board. A pack of M.2 screws, a special little fan holder bracket thing, which I'll figure out when I actually install the board. And then just for the people who collect driver DVDs for no apparent reason, we've got a driver DVD. And now let's finally get to the board itself. And you know what? This thing actually looks surprisingly good. I'm not usually a fan of pretty much any yellow in any kind of build, but this one actually looks pretty decent. As expected, we definitely have a black, gray, and yellow look going on here. But the yellow only really serves as an accent here and there, and actually adds a fair bit of character to the board. The rear of the board has no such accents, instead keeping things clean and minimalistic. Now, all Z490 boards are equipped with Intel's new LGA 1200 socket, which for the most part is almost identical to the previous gen socket. And heck, even the cover of the socket on this particular unit says LGA 115X. But as the naming would suggest, we do have more pins on this socket than we do on previous gen sockets, which are added probably to provide more power to these power-hungry chips. This means that even though previous gen chips could probably fit in the socket, they're not actually compatible with it, which kind of sucks. But what doesn't suck is that Intel's upcoming Rocket Lake generation will support LGA 1200, so you could presumably upgrade to one of those chips with a board like this. And one thing that shouldn't really be all that surprising is that coolers built for previous gen CPUs will still work perfectly fine on this socket. So yes, you will have to buy a new motherboard for the new CPUs, but at least you won't have to get a different cooler along with it. That's something, I guess. Memory-wise, the board features 4 DIMM slots with a maximum capacity of 128 GB. And it supports a max overclock memory speed of 4600 MHz. This full ATX board provides ample room for expansion, thanks to 2 16x PCIe 3.0 slots along with 3 PCIe 1x slots. And speaking of expansion, the board also has storage more than covered, featuring 2 M.2 slots along with 6 SATA 6 gigabit ports, along with support for Intel's Optane. The board also features a ton of internal I/O ports, including more than enough fan, pump, and RGB headers than you're ever likely to need, along with USB connectors for days, including one for Thunderbolt, which is actually pretty cool. As for the rear I/O, we've got the usual suspects in the form of audio jacks and an optical out, along with a PS2 keyboard and mouse combo port. And then after that, things get a little more interesting. If you do decide to pick up one of the new Intel chips that ship with an iGPU, you'll be able to connect your monitor directly to the motherboard through the usual HDMI port. But if you're feeling a little adventurous, you can even plug straight in via DisplayPort, which is something I haven't personally seen on a motherboard. While I personally prefer to have as many USB ports as possible on the back of my motherboard, the TUF Gaming 6 is probably more than enough for most people. Of those 6, 2 are USB 3.2 Gen 2, with one being Type A and the other being Type C, while the remaining 4 are Gen 1 Type A. Connectivity-wise, the board features Bluetooth 5.1, a LAN port, and Wi-Fi. What's interesting here is that even though the new generation supports 2.5 gigabit LAN, ASUS opted instead to stick with 1 gigabit. That being said though, I think ASUS more than makes up for this by fully supporting one of the 10th gen chips' other major selling points, official support for Wi-Fi 6, which leaves previous gen Wi-Fi configurations in the dust. Now that we've covered most of the surface level stuff, I think it's time to dig a little deeper into what's under the hood of this motherboard. The 10th gen chips are expected to be absolute power hogs, and extremely hot ones at that. And to that end, the TUF Gaming seems just about up for the challenge. The board implements a 12+2 Dr. MOS or DR MOS power stage design, which ASUS says combines high side and low side MOSFETs and drivers into a single package, and that it should deliver the power and efficiency that 10th gen chips demand. In order to keep all that power and heat in check, the board features fairly robust heat sinks on the VRMs, along with thermal pads on the important bits. The board also features components that receive the TUF treatment. This includes what ASUS calls Pro Cool sockets, which are built for optimal power delivery, along with TUF chokes and capacitors, built for stability and durability. Now the board features a bunch of other specs and other things that you guys might find interesting, but that I don't have the time to cover in this video, so I'll link the official page down below if you want to go check that out. But from everything I've covered already, even though we'll have to wait a little longer to see what this board actually can do, the TUF Gaming Z490-Plus Wi-Fi actually seems like a really solid, no-nonsense board. And at its pre-order price of $200, it's positioned very competitively too, especially since it seems like one of the cheapest Z490 boards to ship with built-in Wi-Fi 6 capabilities. All in all, I'm expecting quite a lot from ASUS's TUF Gaming Z490-Plus Wi-Fi, and we'll definitely see whether it can actually deliver on all those expectations. Hashtag soon. And that wraps it up for this quick little overview of Intel's new chipset along with ASUS's TUF new board. As always, smack that like button, bro, get subscribed, and enable notifications so you don't miss my actual review. And while you're down there, check out my Patreon page. It's the best way to support the channel directly while also getting your name in the credits of all my videos, along with some other bonus features. And then finally, this video literally wouldn't have been possible if ASUS didn't send this thing over for me to check out. So if you see them around in the socials, be sure to give them some love and tell them I sent you. And again, if you're in South Africa, don't forget to keep an eye on ASUS ROG South Africa's social media pages for a chance to win a Z490 board of your own. Competition ends on the 20th of May, so you better get on that, like, now. Okay, and that's me done. I'll see all of you guys next Wednesday for no particularly exciting reason at all. Cheers.